Ladies and gentlemen, my name is TotalBiscuit. I'm here to ask and answer one simple question. WTF is Party Hard? It is a stealth action murder sim of sorts, and it's developed by Pinokl and published by Tiny Build. The story, at least initially, is quite simple. You've been woken up at 3 AM, the party will not allow you to get to sleep. Go and kill everybody in the party. Simple as that. And don't get caught, of course. Let's have a quick look at the options menu before we dive in. Resolution options don't go higher than 1080p. They are adding higher resolution, but it's not in the game yet. Full screen on or off, music levels and sound levels here. Controls cannot be rebound, unfortunately. Although it does support 360 controller as well as keyboard. It's totally fine with either, frankly. And you also have Twitch config. You might wonder what that is. Well, the game has Twitch functionality, and what that means is while you're streaming, your chat can vote on various different events, which is kind of neat. Kind of like that idea. It's not too crazy in the sense that it's not going to completely ruin your game if you don't use it, but it's a nice little extra, and the chat can either help or hinder you by causing various events to occur. It's kind of cool. It's a nice little implementation, actually. Simple but effective. Nothing too crazy, but a nice little addition nonetheless. Okay, let's jump in, shall we? And I'll show you exactly what's going on with it. So, I'm only 3 levels in. You might be thinking, well, that's not very far. Yeah, because this game's really hard. Like, I can't get further than this. Like, I fail so often. So, let me dive in and show you exactly what's going on here. You can unlock different heroes, but... well, heroes, I use that term loosely. But you can only play as the guy trying to get some sleep initially. So let's just dive in. I don't think there's any real difference between them, but it's hard to say. This game lacks tutorial information and really any feedback whatsoever outside of those little pieces of paper on the floor, which will give you the occasional hints. So, you have to murder everybody. There's your kill counter at the top here. How do you do it? Well, mostly you stab them. Alternatively, if I hit the control button here, it will show you various traps that you can activate. So I could activate this car, which would run over everybody in front of the club right there. So if we move in here, I can show you how to do that. There we go. So that should run over that, and it'll also kill off the bouncer, which is kind of handy. So we won't have any trouble entering and leaving the club. So if I hit this, it'll give you a couple of little clues. They're not necessarily that useful, because the clues often refer to things that you almost never get access to. Like the smoke grenade, for instance, is an example of that. The smoke grenade, I've never even seen it drop. You do get items in this game, but they're very, very rare and hard to acquire. If you notice the suitcase up to the top right where the robbers are stealing all the cash, that's an item, and it can contain something completely at random, or indeed it might not even spawn. It's entirely possible. The levels are semi-random in the sense that every time you try a level, something will be a little bit different about it. Either the placement of the enemies, I say enemies, the placement of the people, the various traps available. Some traps won't be available, some traps will be, and special events and things like that. So the police have been called. That's because I murdered somebody over there, but nobody saw me do it, so the police are going to go and put that body in a body bag, and then they're going to leave. So generally speaking, you don't want to be seen. Now, how do you avoid that? Well, if you hold down control, there's a proximity indicator. Although I found that the proximity indicator is not necessarily 100% accurate. And this should give you some indication as to whether or not somebody is going to see you. Now, if they find a body and you're nearby that body, they will immediately assume that it's your fault. So if I stabbed this guy right here and then someone walked through the door just afterwards, they'd assume it was me, and that's a fair assumption. So I'm not going to do that. I'm going to wait for him to get in there, and then I'm going to get rid of him. And then I'm going to wait for the second chef to come through, and then I'm going to get rid of him as well. I'm just going to move those bodies around the corner so that they don't block the door. The last thing we want is that door open so people can see what I'm doing. So stabbing people and activating traps is the way to get rid of everyone on the level. And it sounds really simple, doesn't it? It's like, oh, it's as simple as that. It's not really as simple as that, because the game is really, really difficult. And the reason it's difficult is because when you get caught by a police officer, if you get fingered, essentially if you get spotted by somebody, a little handcuff icon will appear above your head and you have to escape from the police, and it's very difficult to do that because you can barely move at more than the snail's pace. You have a sprint bar, but it is so quick to disappear. And you can't move faster than the police officers. The only way to avoid the police officer is to make him give up. And the only way to do that, more often than not, is to use some kind of escape hatch. Now, you'll notice the escape hatch because I used it earlier to get into the building. So if you keep using that, then the police officer will eventually give up. Sounds fine, right? Well, no, because the game's evil. And if you use that too much, what it's going to do is it's going to get boarded up by a handyman who's going to appear. And you can't stop him, by the way. He's unkillable. So as much as you might wish to stop him from boarding things up and preventing you from using the escape hatch, you just can't do that. So it's a very limited use kind of option. So what am I doing here? Well, I can't really murder everybody here. I could activate some of these columns here and they would explode and potentially kill people. That might work. That's a thing that I could do. But there's no one really nearby. So what I can do is I can dance. The dancing move is a bit unreliable. Sometimes it makes people move away from you, and sometimes it makes people dance with you. So it's not really a reliable way of getting people to clear the room, but it's really one of the only ways that you have. The game gives you a hint that claims that pizza can attract people to a room, but I haven't actually figured out exactly how to pick up pizza and drop it. I think maybe I just picked it up there, but I can't drop it anywhere. If we look at the controls, like, oh, use item, that's F. Well, F doesn't drop the pizza. You can summon pizza by calling pizza delivery, but then they tend to wander off to a random room, so it's really not that useful a function. Very, very odd. The main problem that I've got with the game initially is that the game has no tutorial whatsoever. So everything that you pick up, you do so either via trial and error or because you found a piece of paper with a hint on the floor. The problem is that the hints that are spawned are pretty random, meaning that... Oh, damn it, they spotted me. Okay, so I'm going to pop him in the process. They're going to call the cops on me now. I can activate this trap, and hopefully this means that the police officer will be killed. Outside of that, I can bail out of this escape hatch. Anyway... The hints seem to be kind of random, so as a result you can get the same hint multiple times, which is really not remotely useful, as you might imagine. And some of the hints are really obscure, like the smoke grenade hint, for instance. I've never even got a smoke grenade in the entire duration of play. If we head on over to the back, we can pick up that suitcase, and maybe we will get a smoke grenade this time around, and it's usually one-use items that might be able to help you in some way. So, I don't want to be anywhere near that. Someone just called the police because there's a dead body in there. So I'm just going to try and avoid that. Maybe I can get there quick enough. I'm hoping they won't arrest me for this, because they have no reason to suspect that was me. I just picked up a sword here, and I'm now going to head up onto the stage. There we go, and I can maybe electrocute the singer. There we go. I just need to get away from that body pretty quickly. Thankfully, I think the police officer's a bit distracted and is going in the other direction, so it's not really a problem. Yeah, he hasn't suspected that it's me, so it's fine. You can just wander off in that direction. There you go. No problem at all. Now, the way that everything interacts is very interesting because it's really quite chaotic. The systems at play are essentially stealth game mechanics, assassination mechanics. So try and assassinate people when they're not around other people. That's pretty logical, right? The problem is, of course, that people tend to wander at random for the most part, and you don't have many ways to control where they go. So I can blow this up, which will kill these guys, but let's say that this room was full of people. The only way I can really get rid of them is by dancing, which may or may not get rid of them. Sometimes it does, sometimes it does not. And just to make matters worse, the game also has random events, meaning that some crazy thing can happen. Like, the FBI can suddenly appear, and even though you haven't been detected, they can just bust you immediately, and then you lose. I think the game would benefit from giving you a lot more visual feedback, let me put it that way. Line of sight indicators would be nice. This proximity indicator is nice, but it's not necessarily reliable, and it's often a little bit counterintuitive. For instance, I can kill someone while... Ah, damn it. How did he spot me there? I'm pretty sure I was behind a wall. Evidently, I was not. So the police are going to come now, and I'm going to have to escape. There we go. Oh, but he's not coming after me for some reason. That's weird. I'm trying to figure out exactly what happened there. That's the real problem with the visual feedback. So when they spot a body, there's a fraction of a second where there'll be a little line which indicates where the person is looking. Then they'll immediately run to a phone to call the police. The problem is that if you don't notice that line for the fraction of a second that it's up, you don't know whether or not they just spotted the body or spotted you until the police arrive and then the handcuffs icon appears. The problem with that is that by that point, it can be impossible to escape, because the only place that I can escape on this level is that escape hatch up to the top, and you can see how slow I move, right? So the police will catch me very, very fast. So it can be super frustrating in that regard. Now, I think there is an argument to make in favor of holding the hand too much, essentially giving too much information to the player. But I think a balance has to be struck, and I feel that Party Hard sort of stands on the side of giving way too little information to the player. And it doesn't help that so many things in the game are a little bit unpredictable. For instance, how long will the police chase you before they give up? There's really no indicator as to how long they're going to do it. And I've had some cops actually give up really quickly, and some cops chase me to the ends of the earth. And I'm trying to figure out, well, what is it that is causing the police to continue to chase me even though I've used the escape hatch a couple of times? Why is that? Now, what's the reason? And the game doesn't tell you. That's the problem. So you're kind of left guessing. And it leaves some of the mechanics something of a mystery. And I mentioned trial and error. Well, that comes down to the fact that some of the people on the level interact with you in different ways. For instance, when I first started, I thought I could just kill everyone with the knife. Well, I immediately discovered, of course, I couldn't kill a police officer with the knife. Then I thought, oh, I can just kill the handyman with the knife. No, he's invincible. And then there's certain other people that are also invincible. So you're thinking, well, what on earth is going on here? And you end up dying in order to discover new things about the game. And I think some people really enjoy that. Some people enjoy that element of discovery through failure. And I think that all games have an element of that. For instance, learning boss patterns. That's a big deal in many games. But to me, this game has just a little bit too much of it, and the problem is that there's no save point in the level, and it can take forever to actually finish a level. You've got to play very patiently, because one screw-up means you have to start the entire level over again. And some levels, like for instance this one, can take quite a while, especially as the crowds start to thin out. Things can get a little bit tricky. So here I should be able to get somebody. There we go, because that person's asleep. I probably can't get him, so I want to move out of the way of that body because someone's going to spot it. And that can cause a sort of chaotic effect because people start to panic and then they move around the area to different places that are a little bit unpredictable. That's a strength of the game, in a way. There are some crazy things that can happen in this game. And I think that's why they put the Twitch integration into it, because there are some really funny and crazy moments, like the police randomly running over a bunch of civilians. That can happen, for instance. Things that are not predictable. The interaction between certain special events and things that are going on the level. And of course, the Twitch chat can screw you over by summoning like an axe murderer or whatever who'll go after you and try to kill you, or summon the SWAT team, which is a really easy way to lose as well. And that's a strength, but simultaneously, it adds a huge degree of frustration to the game, because you are continuously discovering new ways for the game to screw you over. And I think you can get around a lot of that with good visual feedback. And this game lacks a lot of that. It really, really does. The thing that I mentioned earlier about the line of sight indicator popping up for only a fraction of a second, why couldn't that stay there for longer? So that I can clearly see, oh, this person spotted me, or oh, this person only spotted a body. It would be nice to know as someone is running for the phone whether or not they're running because they saw me murder somebody else. And sometimes, just to make matters even more complicated, the police can come and arrest random people, or fights can break out. Now, that's a really cool feature. Don't get me wrong, that's why I'm in two minds about a lot of the features in this game. A lot of me says, wow, that's great. There's so much chaos and unpredictability going on. But simultaneously, when the game involves a failure state which has you restart the entire sodding level every time you screw up, it's not necessarily a good idea to have trial and error be a key factor. Sure, you can avoid a lot of this stuff with skill, absolutely, but it takes a lot of time to learn, and I think a lot of people will just give up in frustration. It's a very difficult game, no doubt about that. But it is highly original, as far as I'm concerned, and I think they took some interesting risks with it, and you can sort of appreciate that. It may not necessarily be, quote, good design in the classic sense, and you could certainly criticize it mechanically, but simultaneously it adds this X factor to the title that other games don't necessarily have. I would hesitate to call it emergent gameplay, because things like the random events, they're not emergent, they're all pre-scripted and they do sort of predictable things, and the game does have a rule set. The problem is just how obfuscated the rule set is, as I said. And better visual feedback would go a huge way, I think, to alleviating a lot of those problems, while hopefully keeping the game chaotic and somewhat unpredictable. I like, to some degree, the fact that the game changes even on the same level. Sometimes there might be a certain trap there or a certain item, sometimes there won't be. Sometimes there'll be a special character there. Sometimes a random event will happen that won't happen in a previous playthrough. That sort of thing. That's appealing in many ways, because that does add replayability to the level. But simultaneously, it also makes the game a lot harder to learn, as you can imagine. Because you can learn by your mistakes, but what's the point in learning from your mistakes if the next time you go into the level, you can't make the same mistake because the level's completely different? Now, practice makes perfect is something that's somewhat usurped, I think, in this game. Yeah, obviously you can get better over time and practice, but that will only go so far. But for a lot of people, I can see that being highly appealing. I refer to games like this in many ways as wiki games. These unpredictable things that you have absolutely no idea what will happen until they occur. The sort of thing that you might have to look up in a wiki if you want to be properly prepared to play. Some people are okay with that. I am not necessarily. I mean, for some reason, that person is attacking me and I have no idea. What? But that was just a... What? How am I busted? By who? What? Was that a bouncer? She just looked like a regular person. You see what I mean? I've been playing this level for 15 minutes now. I have to restart the whole damn thing because of that. That's what I'm talking about when I say that this game has that huge trial and error element. Because I know from previous playthroughs that bouncers will kick my ass if I'm not careful. So if I walk up like he's going to kick my ass and bust me. Yeah? But that's what a bouncer looks like. And indeed, if I recall correctly, I'll have to look at the video again to see if that was true. That little tip that you saw on the floor when we first started this video showed the bouncer and what the bouncer looks like. So is this a bouncer? Well, she's asleep, so I don't think she is a bouncer. I think she's a party goer. I just don't know. That's the problem. I just don't know. Oh. So yeah, I mean, that's sort of my criticism of the way that the game mechanics work, and I'm sort of in two minds about it, because in one way it makes the game unbelievably frustrating, and it means that you have to restart the level multiple times. But on the flip side, I know for some people that level of difficulty is appealing, and that's kind of cool. Oh, we can actually... I've never tried to kill the criminals. They're probably going to try and kill me, I imagine. They're running off, and now they're driving off because I murdered them all. That's interesting. Oh, there you go. I know for some people that is appealing. And you're not wrong if that's the sort of thing that appeals to you, if you like surprises. But for me, it's less of, oh, this is a surprise, and more, this is wasting my time. Oh, and it makes me tear my hair out when I lose a level. It's so easy to lose a level on a knife edge like that. You know, I just got busted by someone that looked like a party goer. I mean, is that some random event where a party goer is like a special agent or something? I don't know, because the game never tells you that. Therein sort of lies the problem with it. Oh, God. Alright, we're going to set the trap here. That should do the trick. Hopefully, anyway. I'm pretty sure he saw me. Not that I can be absolutely sure of that. There we go. So he did see me. So the hope is that the police officer will run past the trap and I'll be totally fine. Of course, sometimes the trap doesn't go off, I find. It did this time, so that's good. Maybe I was, like, too far away. And I'm pretty sure the way that the police path is the straightest direct line to you. I think they're going to call them again now, because I was near that corpse. Oh, man. What a mess. What a mess. I'm not sure. That's the problem. Oh, they will. Okay, so I definitely need to try and escape now. I could maybe try and run him over with the car, but that's it. Outside of that, I think the only sort of other issue that I've got with it is less of a objective criticism. It's more the way that I personally would have preferred the game to work. I think that the game would have worked a little bit better if it was a game sort of like Lucius, which was that sort of Damien simulator game that was out on Steam a little while ago. And that game was by no means perfect, there's no doubt about that. But it had its moments, and that was more a game about setting up traps and using sort of evil powers to manipulate the environment. When I heard that this was all about traps, I was really excited, but there's actually very few traps in the level. And some of them are really not all that effective. They might just get one person or whatever. So it's less about traps, and the vast majority of kills are going to be you stabbing people and just waiting for them to get into a room where you can do that safely. So that's a personal preference thing. I personally would have, I think, enjoyed the game more if it worked that way, but the reality of it is that it doesn't. So conclusion. Really interesting ideas. I personally really like the art style. I know people won't necessarily, and that's a very subjective thing, but I personally think it's a really nice work of pixel art. I like the amount of detail that's put into each level. There's some crazy stuff, like each level always has some weird stuff going on, and there's often different interactions with it. For instance, this level has them trying to steal the money. There's a level that has a meth lab, but sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes that room doesn't even spawn, and it actually spawns a completely different room instead, which I thought was really cool. But there's so much sort of packed into each level that I can really only appreciate that. And I also like the soundtrack as well. The problem is that each level has a particular piece of music, and since you're in each level for so long, it becomes highly repetitive, which sucks, because I really love the music for this game. I think it would be much, much better if they rotated it. And what I'm going to try to do while the police officer is at the other side is try and murder a bunch of people here. Might be a bad idea, but we'll give it a shot. They're going to go and try and tell the police officer that that happened. And yeah, now he's going to go and arrest me, so this was a pretty piss-poor idea. And this trap isn't really going to work that well either. Maybe it will? I think it's probably going to kill me. Yep, it killed me as well. Alright, it was worth a shot. But yeah, game's really, really hard. It has some really interesting ideas that are not necessarily good design, but they're intriguing design. And I can only really appreciate that, at least on some base level. Does that mean that I actually like playing the game? No, I found the game damn infuriating for the reasons that I just gave. Like, is it a good stealth game? Arguably not. Because of those reasons. Because of the chaotic nature of the game and the unpredictability. And I think that stealth games do have to have predictable systems, and they have to have good visual feedback, although not overdo it to make the game too easy. But it's certainly unique in its own right. And I've got to give it a little bit of credit for that. And perhaps if you are a patient person, I think you certainly need to be in order to enjoy this game, because there's a lot of waiting around for people to wander into certain places. And if you're the sort of person that doesn't mind learning through failure and trial and error and trying to pick things up as you go along and being surprised by things that the game never told you about, then maybe Party Hard is for you. It's possible. It's currently available on Steam. The price, I believe, is $12 or $13. It's currently got a weird discount where it's like $9.92 or your regional equivalent, which is a little bit strange. But you can pick it up. You know, maybe you will enjoy it. I think what would be really good for this would be a level editor. That would be awesome. They are adding in some free content, so maybe they will make a level editor at some point. But I think that would, and the ability to share levels would make this a game that had a lot of longevity. As it stands, you're going to be spending a lot of time trying to beat the levels because the game is that bloody difficult. But it's got plenty of interesting, unique aspects. You've got to give them props for trying something different. Party Hard, ladies and gentlemen. Available on Steam for a weird price of about $9.92 on the launch sale, or around $12 or your regional equivalent. My name has been TotalBiscuit. Thank you very much for watching. I'll see you next time.